there was no reply. The most puzzling of all the stories of missing animals comes from the snowy regions of Siberia, the disappearance of the great hairy mammoth. Professor Vereshchagin has been on the trail of the Siberian mammoth for 40 years.
И когда я бывал на Индигирке, в среднем течении, среди зарослей...
When I was camping beside the river in Digirka in Yakutia, it seemed to me that at any moment, from out of the dense undergrowth, the head of a mammoth with its hairy trunk might appear and wander into one of the clearings among the valleys. It is ideal mammoth country.
Долины реки Индигирки.
On expeditions to Yakutia in the far north of Siberia, Professor Vereshchagin and other Soviet scientists have found the tusks and bones of hundreds of thousands of mammoths, which seem to have died in some sudden catastrophe. But back in Leningrad, Professor Vereshchagin does have one of the remarkable specimens which just occasionally emerge from the frozen soil of the tundra. A whole mammoth, fresh frozen for 10,000 years. This is the Berezovka mammoth, just as it was found having fallen down a ravine and been asphyxiated.
И вот эта внезапная смерть, она подтверждается несколькими...
Its pelvis was broken, and in its mouth there was still a piece of food, a clump of grass which had not yet been chewed.
There have always been tales that mammoths still live in Siberia. And then, in 1977, some Soviet gold miners found a baby mammoth in almost perfect condition. Amid great excitement, it was brought back to the Leningrad Museum. But Professor Vereshchagin is sure it died at least 10,000 years ago.
Первобытная орда производила охоту.
The mother was killed by hunters. This baby was wounded by a spear in the right leg. It managed to get away, but died of starvation.
But the discovery of the baby mammoth has produced a possibility even more exotic than the thought that the mammoth could be still alive. Next time a mammoth is found, Russian scientists are going to take some of its frozen body cells and try to clone it. That is, grow, as is now theoretically possible, a new living mammoth from the cells of a body dead but preserved for 10,000 years. Meanwhile, in the winter gloom of Kennedy Airport, the two intrepid dinosaur hunters return from their quest in the Congo.
This expedition into the Congo was the most difficult thing that we've ever done, but it was well worth it.
It was both the best and the worst that I've been on. In the sense, it was the worst in terms of the difficulties encountered, but it's the most exciting in the results of any of the African things I've been on.
I remember walking through muck, slipping into slime up to my ankles, up to my waist at times. I remember the complete exhaustion every half an hour. When you couldn't get another breath of fresh air, you couldn't take another step. We were looking for eyewitness observers, and we gradually began to zero in on the geographical part of this area where eyewitness observers were concentrated. And using that technique, we were able to come to the center of the reports, to a place where actually the animals are alleged to be. They told us about how, about 1959, 3 of these animals, possibly 2, had been coming into Lac Telly. And this had disturbed the fishing of the pygmies. So the pygmies decided they're going to stop this and started to drive stakes in across the opening into the lake. This prevented the animals from coming in, but one was while it was attempting to get through the stakes, was speared by the pygmies. They proceeded to kill the animal and cut it up into slices. The report from the observer was that it took forever because of the long tail and the long neck. They described it as being about 30 feet long, with a head and neck 2 to 3 meters long, some 6 to 9 feet, looking much like a large snake, but attached to a thick body.
What was maddening about it was that at Adipena, we were, I would say, about 25 airline miles from Lac Pele, which is one of the places where there might conceivably still be living specimens of this creature. We were unable to reach the lake because it would have taken from 2 to 3 days to get into the lake, a comparable amount of time to march out, and we would have wanted to stay, sometime at the lake. And we would not have had time to get out of the country before our visas expired.
As we went along and gathered this information, I became more and more convinced that we are dealing with a real animal, perhaps extinct in a very recent past, but still a real animal. Yet if we believe what the Congolese and the Pygmies told us, the animals are still alive today in certain parts of the Bai River, which is a tributary of the Likwala, perhaps even in the Likwala and perhaps Lake Tele. We conclude that there is indeed a real animal and that this animal is a species which is unknown to science in a living form.
So this case remains not proven. But if our exhausted heroes had been able to get their visas extended, they might have found what they were looking for. I think we've given enough evidence to suggest that very large, strange, and possibly amazing creatures may still exist in the remote places of this world. But while they're protected by jungles and swamps and various African bureaucracies, they may be safe from detection for a long time to come.